All right, everybody, welcome back to the TCI headquarters. This week we get to talk about a win. Tigers are 1-0. No, they're 1-1.
No.
All we care about is what happened Saturday.
Be 1-0 every week.
Well, there you go. That's what I was looking for. We're going to review the interviews. I was there for Monday. I was not there Tuesday. Will was there Tuesday. Cameron was there Monday. So these guys are going to recap everything for you guys. Cameron, start with you. Monday was no coordinators this week. This wasn't one of the weeks we're getting the coordinators, but we had about 5 or 6 players.
5 or 6 times,
so, what are some of the highlights you heard Monday?
Obviously, everybody remembers early in the game against Charleston Southern, Cade Klubnik's interception was
I must have
one
missed that.
one he would quickly want to forget because it was just a player who's like, what do you even say about it? But then obviously he's going to get asked about it, and when he was asked about it on Monday, he almost had to hold back laughter because it's like that's the worst play of my entire life along those lines. And it's like, yeah, I mean, it's pretty realistic to say after watching it. And after talking about that, another one of the guys that was really interesting, staying on the quarterback topic, was Hunter Helms. Obviously, he's been here a while, a former walk-on, and talking about obviously people knows that he's talented and he's earned that quarterback 2 spot, but it's like, why would you want to stay at Clemson now on his 4th or 5th year? And it was interesting the way he worded it, because obviously he talked about, he's excited that he's in this number 2 role and he's earned that spot, but he also said he used the word stick it out. Like he wanted to stick it out for this year. So it's like, I believe he has another year or 2 of eligibility.
Well, I want to say when he was talking about stick it out, he mentioned graduation too.
Yeah, so it's like, it seems like he's looking at this season as like, I got to get through this year, and then he's going somewhere else.
That was my interpretation.
That was the interpretation of how he said it, and that was interesting. And then the other one, because I think it's important for this week, is with Andrew Makuba possibly going to be out again this week. It seems like a day-to-day situation. Khalil Barnes, we talked to him on Monday. Obviously, he had a strong game, and it wasn't anything that he did. It wasn't like he had a loud game. But when you're a defensive back, that's normally a good thing that people don't remember that you did anything big. But yeah, no, he said he was really excited for that opportunity. That was echoed. Obviously, I'll let Will talk about his Dabo Swinney's comments, but a lot of that same stuff where he's taken this opportunity and really done a lot with it as that nickelback.
Well, we had another quarterback Monday too. We had Tyson.
Paul Tyson.
That was pretty cool because he reflected on, why he decided to come to Clemson for this extra year, and had some jokes about growing up, Bear Bryant's
all that Bear Bryant
family
stuff.
And all that stuff, and told the story about him wrestling the alligator or not the bear. And that's and they even asked him would he do that, and he's like, well, I guess I'd have to. And but I thought he handled that well. I mean, you could when my interpretation of listening to him was, okay, he's already a coach.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, absolutely. And that's like, they had asked him about it. It's like the opportunity of being a coach really interests him. And obviously he's been in this role. And I feel like being a backup quarterback in college football really melds you into that because he knows he's not going to take the field over Cade Klubnik barring something ridiculous. But he's taken that spot where he can be a counselor almost to him and try to look at the tape, try to help whatever he can because that's his role on this team and that translates well.
That's why they brought him in.
Yep.
I mean, that's the exact reason.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And he played well. Hunter played well last week when they both got the chances to go on the field. They really offense didn't miss a beat. Going back to what you said about Cade, I thought Cade handled things as well as he could in his press conference. I thought he had good attitude. He kind of took some of it on himself, and I thought he handled that.
Well, that's how he's always been. And then obviously, another thing that he talked about was that lineage of quarterbacks at Clemson. It's kind of hard to be in that shadow of Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence, and he was asked about that. And it's like, oh, well, I'm just focused on being the best me, and that's a hard thing to do when the expectations are so high. But it's really nice to see that he has that mentality, and he's not all that weight and pressure doesn't bear down on him.
Well, he doesn't have to be the guy to follow Deshaun and Trevor. He gets to be the guy that follows DJ, so that helps a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Just
kind of like the coaching thing.
Yeah,
you don't want to be the guy to follow Nick
point.
Saban or Dabo, but he had a little buffer in there for. All right, Will, you got to listen to the Dabo Swinney, Peter Woods, other folks on Tuesday. What are the highlights? Let's start with Dabo.
Yeah, I think Dabo, his main message, I guess, was the turnovers. And it really kind of talked about how 8 of the last 9 games, Clemson's lost the turnover battle. And he mentioned that's something that they have to get corrected. That's just not acceptable. That's something they got to fix.
How many games? 8 out of 9?
8 of the last 9, going back
Okay.
to last season.
So if you hadn't fixed it for 7 out of 8, how you gonna fix it?
Well, somebody
Yeah,
asked
right?
him that question. It's good that you asked. Somebody asked him that question. He says it all just goes back to practice. He's like, that's something that obviously they do on their what do they call it, Tacoma Tuesday or whatever, Tugga Tuesday. Take care of the ball basically day, and so it is emphasized in practice. He thinks more of it's a mental thing with them right now, and it's just something that they got to show that they can do it, and then once they do it, they'll have that confidence to know they can play that kind of game. But he says it's not necessarily that they don't turn the ball over, but they also need to force turnovers. He's like, we need to be at least even. So if we turn it over 3 times, we need to get it back 3 times and play complementary football, as he talked about last week, kind of the same.
How about we don't turn it over and we get 3?
Well,
Might need that next week.
you might need that. You're probably going to need that
Yeah.
next week. And I'm glad you said that, because to me, I think it does start with the defense. I think the defense sets the tone on that. So if the defense can force some turnovers, then especially at home, that gets a little momentum going, and that mojo goes over to the offensive side, and they're taking care of the ball. They're going and making big plays and scoring. So it kind of does
That
work
new
hand in
crowd
hand.
will get fired up next week.
Well, yeah. Let's be honest. Yes, you're right. I mean, it sucks in that sense. But Clemson hasn't had bad noon crowds. And I went back and did some research in my story that I had on Clemson Insider last night about that.
I hope y'all read that.
Did you know this week will be only the 4th home game in the last 3 years Clemson's had at night? Only the 4th. And going back, since 2013, Clemson's only had 18 home games at night in Death Valley. So they played
And they
way
did pretty
more
well
night.
during that stretch until they ran into South Carolina last year.
Yeah, they've done well. That's the only time really they've done well playing in those early kickoffs, and they've played in a lot more than most people do. Probably more than anybody that's been in the college football playoff as much as Clemson. I guarantee you. Now the flip side of that, and I give Brian Hennessy credit for putting me on the radar to this. Clemson's played in the last 3 years 11 road games at night. 11.
And we have memories of all those.
Yeah,
things.
and they continue. And like for Florida State series, for example, in the history of Clemson, Florida State's only played in Death Valley in prime time 6 times. Flip it over, Clemson's played in Tallahassee 10 times.
And we don't like night games, but we all said as we left here last week, we're like, we'll take a night game for Florida State. We'll take one for the team because that's what Clemson needed. And then, sorry guys, we did our part.
It's not just on noon.
That's right.
But I'm not going to complain.
So what else did Dabo say?
No.
I get to watch Notre Dame Ohio State that night. Anyway, what else did Dabo say? He talked about Cade Klubnik, and he thought he improved after that mistake. And so it's funny. He was talking about, he's like, we've had like 2 football games, and he says they've played really good offensively. The majority of those 2 games, he said, for 5 plays. And he says, those 5 plays were really horrible. And Cade Klubnik was 4 of them. so his point was, we got to get Cade to just kind of understand the situations, understand his defense as good as they, and Dabo talked about that. Look, we got one of the best defenses in the country. We need to lean on that and understand we need to take care of the football because of those guys and give them an opportunity to get the ball back for you and keep that momentum there. So that was one of the things he really stressed, is like Cade showing improvement, but he was proud of the way Cade came back, and he said he graded out after that one horrible play, graded out really well, and completed 76% of his passes, had 4 touchdowns after that, 315 yards. But they said they need to make sure they eliminate those other plays.
So you're saying Dabo sounded a little bit like Kevin Steele?
Yeah, I guess you could say that. But he did say, unlike Kevin Steele, he did say, but those 5 plays were really, really bad. Kevin Steele would never even admit about those 5 bad plays. So, so I think with Cade, it's just more of, he's just got to understand he's got to take care of the football. He can do some special things. And I think, like Dabo even said, I'm okay with him, the drop snap, that happens. That's football. Guy takes his eyes off the ball. Those things happen. You want to limit those, but it's going to happen. But he's like, the interception? No, you got to eat it. You can't do that. That you cannot do. That can be corrected, and he thinks he will get it corrected.
Well, one of the things Cade talked a little bit about Monday was just sometimes it's hard to see back there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously he's not a 6'4" quarterback. But he talked about, he was kind of throwing it over here thinking something was over there, and it wasn't because he couldn't really see over there. So
Yeah.
that's something else he's got to think about, is making sure he's throwing when he can see the lanes.
And obviously, if you're throwing it away, you need to make sure you have the
sure you
cannon
have
to
the-
do so.
Exactly. Have enough arm to get it out of bounds.
I wasn't, whether he saw something or not, like going back foot with a pass rusher on you, you're never getting that ball to the sideline, and that's
Well,
what
what's
cost
the
him.
main thing on that was, and he admitted he made, like, he saw something. But when he saw something before pre-snap, call timeout. It's first half. That's what they're for.
Right.
Call timeout. Don't snap it and like, oh my gosh, and run around like a crazy man. You know, you saw the play was going to get blown up, and you hurt your offensive line when you do that. Somebody could get hurt. You could get hurt, or you throw a pick six.
Well, we got to remember too. It's not like he started all year last year.
Right.
Yeah.
He's basically still a freshman.
He is.
So he's
and
gonna,
he didn't get a lot
he's
of
going to
first
get
team
more
reps.
experience. He's going to get more confidence. Hopefully, as the season goes along, we're going to see just see him getting better and better.
Yeah, and one thing the wide receivers I think need to do a better job at Clemson is because he's a scrambling quarterback. They need to understand that, and they need to go, like you mentioned, he can't see things sometimes. They
Run
need to
back
go
to the
make
ball.
sure he does see them.
Right.
Get in his vision, you know, and I think that's important. I think that's something the wide receivers need to do a better job of at Clemson.
Peter Woods, first interview with him.
he was
Obviously, we
great,
talked
man.
to him at the Gerald Clemson event,
Yeah.
but first Clemson event. Talk a little bit about what that was like.
Yeah, he was great. You know, as we know, he talked with me at the event, and you know, the best story was he was asked about his, you know, when he was 13 is when he went to play varsity football. So he's in the 8th grade, and he's gone moved up to varsity. He said he's like 6'1", 220 pounds already at that point. Can you imagine? You know, and he says so he gets moved up to varsity, and so first day he goes through and there's a pulling guard, and he just takes him and he just runs right through the pulling guard, takes the running back and just throws him on the ground. You know, his typical throw tackle, and the coach blows the whistle and says, "Woods, what in the blankety blank are you doing? This is a walkthrough. Yeah, get out of there." So that was his first indoctrination to play varsity football, and he like was a walkthrough. And
Now
he's
we're
just
okay
throwing
to see
running
that, and whenever he wants to.
back. Not doing a walkthrough.
Yep.
Yeah, no.
I want to see it against Florida State over and over and over.
But he was good, and he talked about just you know his tackle, like why he tackles that way, and he says the reason he tackles the way he does is because this day and age, you know, they never like they won't blow it dead. So he says I'm gonna make sure it's blown dead. So I'm just gonna throw the guy to the ground. He's like, then they can't say, oh,
Right.
you know, we didn't blow the whistle. So he says I'm gonna make sure they blow the whistle. I'm just gonna slam them to the ground. He's like, so that's why he tackles that way.
Great kid, great family. Dad's a preacher.
Yep.
Could have gone anywhere he wanted. Gotten a lot of NIL money. Came to Clemson because of a lot of things Dabo sells.
Yeah,
So,
he talked about that as well.
he's a great get for Clemson. And good news is you get to enjoy him for 2.5 more years.
And then another thing going off that throwing, one of the things I did here, I want you to elaborate on, was Will Shipley admitting that he's been on the receiving end of a couple of those
Yep.
throw tackles.
Yeah, so I think somebody, Fox Carolina reporter, somebody I think asked him about that. Had he ever been on the end of it? And he says, Will smiles and just says, well, I can't lie. I mean, because I wouldn't be telling the truth if I did. He says, I'm just going to say Peter Woods is a stud. And so he admitted that he had been on the end of those tackles in practice, and he's like, he's just a different kind of guy, just strong, physical. I mean, if you watched the game the other day, I mean, I feel sorry for those offensive linemen for Charleston Southern because he was just killing them inside there.
Yep. Anything else you guys want to hit on from the interviews?
I give a little shout out to Hamp Green. I thought he was outstanding. Very, very well spoken young man.
Was his interview as good as his catch?
Yeah, it really was. he was very told stories very well. He talked about how the day that morning on sport, he had no idea that he was the number one player at Sports Center. And he's like, his whole phone starts blowing up, and everybody's like, "Oh my gosh, you're number one!" And he's like, "Number one in what?" And he's like running to the TV to see it. And so he said that was pretty cool. And
That's really cool.
He talked about Dabo, giving him the scholarship this past August and what that meant to him, and how he's from Birmingham and walked on to Clemson and stuck it out. And then he's like, I'm a prime example of why you stick it out. And I got awarded with a scholarship.
Dabo gave a scholarship to Somebody from Birmingham?
Yeah.
Walk on? That's hard to believe. Shocked fan base out there.
We should have used that as a headline. Devo gives scholarship to Alabama kid.
Shocking. All right, guys. Anything you want to add, Cameron? You
No, I
good?
think so. Got everything covered.
All right, guys. That's our recap. Our Tiger Talk, we're going to call it. Actually, we can call it, well, this week we can't because we're not filming on Tuesday because I was out of town, but we're going to call it Tiger Talk from here forward. That works better with the week changes. So hopefully you guys got a taste of the interviews this week, a taste of some discussion of the win last week, and make sure you stay tuned to the Clemson Insider for the most complete coverage of Clemson athletics.
Hey Tiger fans, make sure you go follow the Clemson Insider for the best coverage of Clemson athletics and recruiting. Nobody does it better.